Keys. I'm in the foreign vibing. Slide. Feeling like Fabio Big.
Let's chat with Fatality MMA. Man, the first one was such a big hit, I decided to do a part 2. Thank you guys for the support. If you haven't seen the first one, check the description. I'm not going to hold you up. Let's jump straight into it. Tarantula and Scyther. Now this one at first, I was a little iffy about. But I thought about it for a minute and it kind of made sense. Especially when I saw this video. You know, the Japanese bug fighting. It was a tarantula and a prey mantis. So again, it made sense. But the thing that I'm not sure about is tarantula the prey, or are they, again, just two predators hunting the same thing? Now, when we look further into it, Scyther, the ninja-like Pokemon with speed and agility, has the ability to take down bigger prey like Stantler. But they prefer smaller prey like Sentry and Pidgey, which is roughly around the same size as Tarantula. Now, in real life, tarantulas eat bugs around their same size. So again, I think they're both just predators. Now let's talk about Tarantula one more time. Being the string ball Pokemon doesn't really make sense to me, because in real life, tarantulas don't make web. They burrow and line those with silk. However, the Pokedex does say that their threads that tarantulas makes is strong enough to deflect Scyther's scythe. Now, my biggest thing is when this Pokemon does evolve into Spidos or Spidas, I feel like their matchup is a little bit more even, because now he's like 3'3" and Scyther's like 4'11". I mean, not that even, but it's better. And another cool thing before I end this is Spidos or Spidas? Spidops. Well, he's loosely based on the California trapdoor spider, and that thing creeps me out. Now let's move on. Tinkaton and Corviknight. Now this one has the most buzz, especially with the release of Scarlet and Violet. Now there's two things I want to talk about when it comes to these Pokemon. One, they're both being highly intelligent, and two, the fact that they both love to scrap. First, let's talk about Corviknight. Ever since its pre-evolution's form, it's smart enough to use tools while in battle. Also, the female version of them really don't like to be touched or like to be dirty, and if you make them dirty, they will peck at you ruthlessly. Now, Corviknight, although it reigns supreme in Galar skies, their natural rival, Tinkaton, will knock them out the sky in Paldea. Now, if they are close together, that is funny, those regions that you can fly over here with Corviknight, but as soon as you go across that border, there's like big rocks flying at you. Anyways, let's talk about Tinkaton for a second. Now, this Pokemon has problems all throughout its evolution. First, as a Tinkatink, it's known as the Metalsmith Pokemon, yet others come through and steal its hammer just to eat the metal. Tinkatuff, now this little pickpocket or the hammer Pokemon, always attacks the groups of Ponyards or Bisharps just to gather metal for his next hammer. A mini pirate, you know, stealing the booty, whatever. But last but not least is Tinkaton, and that's the whole reason we started this, because Tinkaton likes to throw rocks or knock rocks at Corviknight and knock him out the sky. I mean, to me, it feels like that's the best metal they can find, so they say, let's just knock them out. But they also like to plunder too. These Pokemon are like pirates, man. Once that hammer get big enough, it just goes around knocking everything over and taking what it wants. But that makes sense to me, because as a Tinkatink, people are constantly stealing this metal. So once it gets older and gets bigger, it just starts to be a pirate. Makes sense to me. Bisharp and Fracture. Now both of these Pokemon are from Gen 5, and they're both kind of river Pokemon, or they live in mountain areas, mostly because they can sharpen their blade on rocks close to the river. Now, where they differ is, Bishop, they normally leave a group of Ponyards, and if they happen to run into another Bishop with a group, they battle. The loser's driven off and basically an outcast, but the winner, his group grows larger. And once they get like a vast army, only the strongest Bishop out of that army can evolve into a King Gambit. Now King Gambit is really cool because of some of his abilities. One, Defiant. If you try to use an ability on him, his attack goes up twice, if I'm not mistaken. Then the other one, Supreme Overlord, is basically for every Pokemon that falls in your party, he gets stronger and stronger. So he really is like the Supreme Overlord. I like Bisharp. I like Bisharp. Fracture, the Axial Pokemon. Now this one kind of reminds me of humans a little bit, because as an Axial, its tusks can break and go back like baby teeth. But as a Fracture, its tusks are permanent and they're not coming back, you know. So he's a little bit more inclined to keep up with them. That's why they have these random battles, or fierce battles, however you want to describe them, with Bisharp. They both want to keep those blades, tusks, upkeep, you know, well, up to keep. Now, my biggest question about this rival is, when he becomes a King Gambit, and the other guy becomes a Haxorus, however you guys say that. I wonder, does this rivalry keep up? Because Haxorus, that's like his pride and joy, his tusk. Makes me think. I mean, he even licks up dirt to keep him in mint condition. I don't know. Talk about the other Pokemon though. But since we're in the mountains, let's talk about Tyranitar and Agron. Now this is the Gen 2, Gen 3 Pokemon respectively, and they're both known for the armored Pokemon. The only difference is Agron is the iron armor Pokemon. But let's go back to Tyranitar. He's so powerful that he can change the landscape, crumble mountains, change everything. And majority of the time he's just wandering around looking for a new opponent. And with skin so tough, even as a Pupitar, it's like tough as sheetrock, so we can only imagine how tough a Tyranitar is. But don't forget about that Sandstorm ability. Everywhere he goes, he causes Sandstorm. Extremely annoying. Now let's get back to Agron. I think I said that right, yeah, Agron. Now he claims an entire mountain, not he, she, whatever. They claim an entire mountain territory as their own, and surprisingly very protective of it. So like if you mess their stuff up, they will thrash you about, and half the time they're just fixing it up beautifully restored in their area, because they're just that type of nature-ish Pokemon. But now that conflicts with Tyranitar, because he just want to wander around and fight everybody. So I can see why this rivalry comes about. Makes sense. Oh, and I know the Mecha Godzilla. We did that in the last video, so we're just going to kick that down the street. Kick that idea down the street. You know who else kicking it? Serena and Quackleball. Now, Quackleball got a lot of hate when it first got revealed. I'm actually a fan of it. I just felt like if it's really that girly, get a girl version of Quaxley, then you have a girl Quackleball. Anyways, that's beside the point. Now, we're going to talk about Quaxley first. Quaxley migrated to Paldea from a distant land. And one of the funny things about it is, as it grew up and traveled across the world, it basically looked and saw other people, the way they move, the way they dance, and incorporated it in itself. So that's how we get Quackleball with this new strange style of dancing in the Pokemon world. To us, it's just Carnival. I know. Now, let's switch over to Serena. Serena starts out as a Bonsweet, a sweet, small little Pokemon who's just joyous. But as soon as it evolves into a Stanine, or however you say that, then once it learns Stump, it evolves into a Serena. Serena's a cruel Pokemon off top. It has long, slender legs that are like most people use for beauty magazines and stuff like that because she has beautiful long legs. But those are very powerful and they throw kicks with those, and they can break things. They can knock over trucks and stuff like that. Even to a point where for some reason, every time it kicks an opponent and they fall to the ground, it laughs. It goes back to her being cruel. But the Pokedex says in Scarlet and Violet that it sees Quackleball as a rival. I wonder if Quackleball sees her as a rival. Next Pokemon. So let's go back to the water and go a little bit deeper in the water since we haven't talked about that much. This next one is Luminion and Lantern. First, we're going to talk about Lantern because Lantern really is an ugly fish. I remember seeing it on Finding Nemo, the real life version of it. But the Pokemon is also known as the Deep Sea Star, mostly because it uses its antenna to light up to attract prey. But the thing about it is you can see that light 3 miles above water if it's 3 miles underwater. But I like Lantern because it's a cool Pokemon because it has that electric water, so you can't beat it any conventional way. But enough about Lantern, that ugly little thing. Let's talk about the Neon Pokemon. Now, these two kind of have a rivalry 2 different ways. One, they're both kind of the light Pokemon. But the funny thing is, earlier Pokedex put Luminion as kind of a pattern Pokemon that flashes its pattern. But later on, they said it has like a light, like a glow to it, a neon glow to it. Now, they both use this light to attract prey. I mean, living at the bottom of the ocean, there's not much light down there, so makes sense. The neon fish is kind of based off that angel fish or that butterfly fish, so it's always quite beautiful to see another rivalry within themselves, adding layers and more depth to this rivalry. Now, I'm going to end this one on the fact that the Pokédex says that Lantern competes with Luminion for prey, food. Now, the funny thing is that Luminion's one of their favorite food is Starmies, and that kind of hurt my feelings a little bit. Last thing, I promise. Their light, not only does it attract prey, it also attracts predators. And one of those predators is in this next one. Brookshire and Toxopex. Now, Brookshire is one of those predators I was talking about in the last one. But these two Pokemon do have one major thing in common. They're both Gen 7 Pokemon, which is Alolan, Hawaii, and in real life, those two animals really do live in Hawaii waters. But first, let's talk about the differences. If we're going to talk about Brookshire's first, the Gnash Teeth Pokemon. Because it just grinds its teeth so much with such great force, it stimulates his brain, and that's how he uses Psychic powers. So, just little ugly fish, just gnawing his teeth all the time. The crazy part is that sound drives Pokemon crazy. It makes Pokemon run away from him in the sea. But also, the Pokemon states that its skin is thick enough to fend off Marina spikes. It also just crushes them and eats them with its teeth. I'm pretty sure the whole Pokemon, not just the spikes. I had to think about it. Alright, so let's next talk about Toxopex. The Crown of Thorn Pokemon, Starfish, either. Now, the first thing that the Pokédex states is that it crawls on the ocean floor with its 12 legs, and we all know that they eat Corsolas, them and their evolution. But the funny thing is, in Hawaii or Aloha with those warm waters, it actually has a bunch of fierce battles with Brookshires, and that's just where this rivalry starts. I don't know what it is, they like warm water, I guess they get most of their prey there too, so it makes sense. But the odds are always in Brookshire's favor, because Brookshires eat its pre-evolution Marini. Now this reminds me of another rivalry in our first video. You should check that out if you haven't. But let's use this to segue to our next one. Marini versus Corsola. Now this goes back to one of those prey versus predator type things. I didn't really want to talk about these, but some of those actually have a good rivalry within them. Now I don't really think this is a good one, but people kept mentioning it in the comments, so here we are. First, Marina, the Brutal Star Pokemon. Now we talked about this one a little bit with this evolution, Toxopex. But let's circle in on something in particular about this rivalry. Now, Marina eats Corsola branches in Alolan, and it's considered a delicacy. But in Galar, and Paldea, it's a little different, because there are no Corsolas of the regular type, they're all ghost types, so they're not really trying to eat those. And they might get poisoned too. But in Paldea, there are no Corsolas at all. So what are they eating? I don't know, but they get shocked by trying to eat those little Pinchuchins. Yeah, they try to eat those spikes and they get hurt by that. Let's talk about Corsola a little bit. This is the Coral Pokemon, introduced in Gen 2, Johto. Now, the cool thing about them is that they can regenerate their branches. Now, if they're being pursued by Marina, they're going to just break them off as a diversion so they can get ghosts, you know? Funny thing about ghosts, we'll get to that. Now, we all know they love warm water, and we talked about that earlier. And this is why I think most of them live in the Alolan region. Although there are in other games, I think in the world they live in Alolan and other islands with warm water. But if we go to Galar, they used to live in Galar too back in prehistoric times, but industrialism drove them away. And we all know Galar's like UK, the birthplace of industrialism, I think anyway. But another funny thing is, they turned into ghost types there. I wonder why. There's probably a legit reason. I think the industrialism not only drove them away, but killed them too, which caused them to become ghost type. And there go humans again, messing up nature. Well, let's go back to land and do these last two. Now this next one is really just a big mess. Goose and Rattata, the Alolan Rattata. Now this is based off a real life situation. In Hawaii, they had a problem because ships coming in and out, rats used to sneak up on the ships. So now rats that are not native to Hawaii are stuck there. And they thought, some genius, let's get mongooses and bring them to Hawaii. Well, these two Pokemon and animals live at different times. Rats are nocturnals and mongoose live in the daytime. So the problem really didn't work itself out. It just kind of made a bigger problem. But let's talk about Goose and his Pokédex entries. Now, one of the entries says that it's always hungry and its stomach fills up most of its long torso. So it searches for food until dusk, then just pass out wherever it's at. I know. Then it only evolves during the daytime, and once it evolves, it becomes the stakeout Pokemon. Now that's funny because as a Goose, it's a loitering Pokemon. I know, funny. Now let's go to Rattata. Rattata can be found anywhere. It is a mouse, it's a rat. It was introduced into the first generation. Now the thing I find funny about this, well, weird about this, is that you can't find it in Galar. And I'm pretty sure like Europe and the UK, bubonic plague, they had a bunch of rats. There's even a game, Dishonored, that's basically a bunch of rats running around where you can use rats as powers. I feel like that should have been in Galar. Anyways, last thing I'm gonna say about this one is that both of these Pokemon only eat fresh food. So if you're going shopping, they're like the perfect partner to take with you. Last one, Noivern versus Hydreigon. Gen 6 and Gen 5, 2 dragon Pokemon. Noivern is the sound wave Pokemon. I honestly think sound types are coming soon, Gen 10, look out for it. But Noivern is a Wyvern and a fruit bat. Also highly aggressive and very cruel. They rule the night sky. But the only thing the Pokedex really says about him and his rival is the fact that in the night skies and the dark of night, they have the advantages over Hydreigon. But that changes in the daytime. Let's see what the Pokedex has to say about Hydreigon. To be honest, it doesn't really say anything about its rivalry in the Pokedex, but it does state that it's the brutal Pokemon and that it will attack anything that moves. Also, the middle head is the only one that has a brain. The other two are just kind of like basically hands with faces and claws. I know. Last thing I'm gonna say about this one is he's actually based on Yamato no Orochi, a Japanese mythological 8-headed dragon. Now, I also linked the video in here for, I think, Dr. Lava, who goes a little bit more explanation about that link or that inspiration. Also, before he became Hydreigon, he was a 3-headed tank dragon. Funny, but that is it. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you check the descriptions. There's links to all these pictures I use, or most of them, and there's links to other videos you guys can check out too. Thank you guys again. Like, subscribe, wait for more videos, check them out. I will do a part 3, and that will be the end of this series. And for all you guys who don't like my pronunciation, I mean, support the channel, donate, pay for my speech classes, and I promise you it'll be better. But yeah, that is it. Appreciate nature.